Is that it?
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Base Game. This is a mini-series where I take a look at expansions to games because frankly, most other reviewers simply won't. This is Seven Wonders Architects Medals, and of course for Seven Wonders Architects, this game, if you have not seen my review of it, by all means check it out. I think I did an express review a year or two ago, and this is one of the kind of pinnacle gateway games of the last few years actually. It's essentially taking the theme and setting of Seven Wonders, the classic drafting game that I've already said how much I love, but it just condensed it down to a very simple choose a card, draw it and resolve its effects type game where you could play with up to 7 players in about 30 minutes or so. It was filler length, and yet it still had enough variety and paths you could do, and it was just light, breezy fun. You know, it wasn't anything like, you know, majorly strategic, it wasn't going to burn your brain cells, it was just nice and simple. Well, of course, as soon as an expansion was released for it, I thought, okay, 2 things to take from this. Firstly, okay, I won't say no to a bit of extra content or something else that we can do in the game. But then I was also, on the flip side, thinking, this is a gateway game, and a good gateway game. Expansions have the problem sometimes of making a game too complicated for its original intent, and I was kind of worried that this one was going to.
Making it bigger doesn't make it clearer.
So what does Seven Wonders Architects Medals add? Well, medals. It's kind of in the title, it's kind of obvious really. But one thing to get onto before we talk about this expansion content is the box. This box is tiny and thin, so you're thinking, okay, there's not much in here. But wait, does it all fit in the main box? Yay and nay, because you will not be able to get everything into the original box and close the lid like you would expect. And I, for one, hate box lift when I have inserts and different expansions shoved into games. I gotta admit, I usually really hate it. Here, you will have box lift, but it's not too bad. This is the expansion fully packed into this box, nice and neat, and there's about 15 millimeters worth of box lift, I would say, you know, about 1 centimeter or so at the very least. But this is quite a sturdy lid, and it's not like the lid is falling off, and everything is still secure in here, so I don't mind it so much with this, but there's no physical way you're going to get it into the box with those trays that are cool for setup and that without some box lift. You're just going to have to deal with it. I dread to think if they release another expansion though with more wonders, I think that might just take it above what I'm willing to put up with. But as you can see, if I take off the lid, rule books and that on the top. The main reason it's got box lift is because you essentially have a tray for the medals themselves, which you could condense down, you could just shove them into into the other box, that's fine. But you do have 2 more wonders, and I've just got 2 random on the top here, but these are the 2 ones you've got, Rome and That's it, Rome and
What the hell are you talking about?
With these 2 wonder trays and this medal tray as well, even if you condense the medal tray down into the boxes underneath, you're still going to get some box lift because you've got to fit these 2 wonder trays in there, and the previous game didn't allow any space for expansion, so you're going to have to put up with that box lift. If that's a deal breaker, then fair enough, but trust me, as somebody who hates box lift, it's actually not too bad here. So what do these medals actually do when you get round to it? Well, the medals are very, very straightforward. I mean, they're just basically plastic discs with stickers that you've got to stick on, but thankfully it doesn't take too long. And I kid you not, this is as simple as it gets. The medals are basically objectives that you and your neighbor are fighting over. So these medals are basically shuffled randomly, and one is dealt out to the players in such that there is one between each 2 players. And basically they represent an objective. So I mean, you know, get 3 red cards, get your 3rd stage of your wonder build, get 3 green cards, get a military victory token, get 2 science tokens, whatever. They basically achieve this. And whoever out of you and your neighbor achieves it first gets the token, flips it over, and it's worth 4 points at the end of the game. What, were you expecting more?
What are you waiting for? A kiss goodbye?
No, I kid you not. That literally is it. That is literally all the medals are. They are just basically an extra form of interaction between you and your neighbors. Bear in mind, you still don't overly care too much about what people on the other side of the table are doing. It just adds something else for you and your neighbors to contend with. It's super simple. In fact, honestly, if you threw this into the game, nobody would even know it was an expansion. Destroy this box and all knowledge of expansion content is gone because you would not be able to tell the difference. So the medals are just stupidly simple to include. You know, the iconography is not the most intuitive on the stickers though, I must admit. Thankfully you do have what they all do basically on the back of the new rulebook, but it kind of would have been nice if they just made it a little bit more intuitive. I mean, most of them are fine, but there are one or two where I'm like, hang on a minute, what does that mean? And you kind of have to check this, but you'll get used to it. As for the two new wonders, you have Rome and you have and both of these are fairly straightforward. I mean, is the easier of the two. It's got a fairly straightforward sort of, you know, 2 at the bottom, 2 in the middle, and 1 thing in order to build for the wonder. But its special ability is that it allows you to take the cat pawn, the one that darts around all over the table because it's, well, a cat and that's what it kind of does. And essentially, you place it in front of you, which is already good, and then you use its ability to choose one of the 3 cards of the deck or the 2 next to you available and immediately place it in front of you. So it gives you an extra turn as well as the cat token, which is kind of cool. It's nice to have, the cat token allows you to look at the top of the main deck in the middle, which is a very useful ability, and that cat has an annoying habit of darting around to all the different players, so being able to kind of summon it on command, depending on which card you take out of your decks, is not bad, but it's a pretty straightforward ability. Rome is a little bit more interesting in that sense. For starters, its wonder is kind of odd because you have 4 pillars and the one at the top. So you build that one last, but you can basically do what on earth you like with the bottom 2, although with the rules in this place you kind of do have to build the 2s before the 3s, but which 2 do you build first? Up to you. Which 3 do you build first? Up to you, really. But its ability uses that kind of mask symbol that you got in 7 Wonders about copying stuff, and essentially you take 1 card in front of any opponent and place it in front of you. Yeah, it's not quite copying this time, is it? It's literal stealing. This one literally basically goes and steals the card from an opponent and triggers the effect of any cat or horn icon if it happens to have one. Thankfully, the player that you steal it from isn't completely screwed over. They get to take the top card of the central deck face down and they will reveal it on their next turn and then take another turn. So you are nicking something from an opponent, but they will get a card to replace it. It just might not be as good as the one that you had before. I'm in 2 minds about Rome because introducing some kind of negative interaction in the game isn't necessarily a good thing here. I mean, yeah, you've got the combat that goes on, but that's not negative interaction. It's just whether you get some points and the other player doesn't. This one is straight up nicking a card. Might throw some people the wrong way, but honestly, this is a 30-minute filler. It's 1 out of, 9 wonders now that you can pick from, and it's going to affect 1 out of a potential 7 players. It's not that big a deal.
Stop whining.
And, well, what else is there to say? There's not much else. You get 4 new progress tokens. 1 lets you keep your military cards with the horns on them. That's great. 1 gets you points for grey cards. There's another one of those progress tokens that says if you get 1 of them, it's worth 4 points. If there's 2, it's worth 12, so you can effectively get 16 points if you get all 3. And, yeah, what else is there, really? I mean, that's kind of it. This expansion is as small as it gets, which is sort of both, I'd say, mostly good, but there is a bad side to it. Firstly, you're paying, about 15 quid for this expansion, which is, to be fair, not that expensive, but it also just means that this expansion doesn't include that much to change the game. Frankly, a lot of people, if they really don't like the whole box lift aspect, you could just glance by this expansion and forget it even exists. It really doesn't have a great deal of impact on the game. But, that being said, its inclusion is pretty much auto-include if you do have this expansion because the rules that you teach in it are negligible. Are you using the wonder? No? Well, you don't care about that then. Progress tokens you just explain as they come out anyway. All you've got to do is explain the medals and it literally takes you like 15 seconds. It's that simple. I wish there was something more I could say, but honestly there isn't. That's 7 Wonders Architects medals in a nutshell. What more do you want? Overall, I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10. It's decent. It's not an amazing expansion. It's not one that makes me go, oh yeah, this is exactly what I wanted for 7 Wonders Architects. It just adds another way to score points, a tiny little bit of interaction with your neighbours, and a couple extra bits of variety, and that's kind of it. So it's not like I can really jump out of my chair for joy over this expansion, but then I can't exactly say it's bad either because it is pretty cheap. You can still get everything in the base box with that little box lift issue. I mean, if you really don't like the box lift, then fine, just keep this on the side, but I don't see why you would. I think it's perfectly fine without. It's just, I was kind of maybe hoping that this would just have more impact than most expansions. But then, on the flip side, I didn't want this to overcomplicate the game and make it less of a gateway game. And thankfully, the main thing to take away from this review is that this does not impact its gateway status. This is still a gateway game, even with this included. So if you want it, go grab it. If you don't, you're not exactly missing that much. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the site. Don't forget to check out the rest of the content I've done. The top 100 is now finished. I've done a podcast recently where I review the Fox Experiment, and I will of course be taking a look at the newest expansion to Heat, Heavy Rain, so by all means check out that video when it goes live as well. Until next time, remember, regardless of whether you earned a medal or not, it's still only a game, so bye for now.